Doctor, did you see last year's study in which interferon gamma 1b improved lung function in IPF patients? If we can conduct a similar study and yield similar results, we can make hundreds of millions of dollars by marketing our brand of interferon gamma 1b or Actimmune to IPF patients.
I did see that study, although it only had a sample size of 18 patients. For our drug to get FDA approval, we will need to conduct a much larger study.
For all I care, we can run it with 300 people. As long as we get the results that we need and I make millions, I couldn't care less how many people are in the study.
As asked, we conducted a clinical trial of Actimmune, our version of interferon gamma 1b. This study took place in 58 hospitals around the world with 330 patients in total.
Of the 330 patients, 10% of the patients on Actimmune died during the trial, compared to a 17% mortality rate among those on the placebo.
And what does that mean? Can we market Actimmune as an IPF drug?
Well, not exactly, sir. The statistics yield a p-value of 0.08. This means that our results were not statistically significant at an alpha level of 0.05, and therefore we do not have enough evidence to support an association between Actimmune and a reduction in mortality rate for patients with IPF.
What if we take out the people with severe IPF?
Are you proposing another trial, Dr. Harkonnen?
Of course not. I'm telling you to look back through the data we already have. Just take out the patients with severe IPF. And if that doesn't work, stratify the data by age and see if that gets us some statistical significance.
That's not exactly ethical, sir.
Any p-values that we report need to be the direct result of the data collected from the sample. That was our study's initial focus. Coming back to the data...
A statistic is a statistic. I'm a doctor. I'm pretty sure I understand p-values. They teach them at length in medical school. As soon as you find a subgroup with favorable results, we need to publish our results immediately. I want FDA approval, and I want to market Actimmune to IPF patients.
Intermune announces Phase 3 data demonstrating survival benefit of Actimmune and IPF. Reduces mortality by 70% in patients with mild to moderate disease. Do you think that this press release is accurate?
I'm the CEO of this company, and it's my job to ensure that we're profitable. That's exactly what I did. Besides, what are they going to do? Arrest me?
Dr. Scott Harkonnen, you're under arrest.
For what?
You've been charged with wire fraud and false labeling based on the misinformation in your company press release of its Actimmune drug.
That's absurd. Everything I published is supported by data. I didn't falsely label anything, and the press release wasn't fraudulent. I should be able to say whatever I want based on the First Amendment.
That's for a jury to decide. For now, you come with me.
Hey honey, you know that case I'm doing jury duty for?
Yeah, I've read up on it.
Well, apparently, now it seems like the Intermune company did a follow-up trial to try and find stronger evidence of the survival effects presented in the whole press release debacle. So basically, while the old boss was on trial, they went ahead with his idea and tried to get better results for their drug.
Oh really? What did they find?
Well, let me tell you. So this trial, according to this article, enrolled only mild to moderate cases of IPF, and its primary endpoint was overall survival time. Blah, blah, blah. This study was not able to provide the evidence to support increased survival with the drug. So of the 826 patients, 15% on Actimmune died compared to 13% of those on the placebo. Sounds like the trial ended early and the insurance company stopped paying for the drug altogether.
Wow, more people died on the drug than on placebo? Sounds like Intermune's dream of a profitable cure for IPF is over.
Sounds like it.
Dr. Biostatistician, is it true that you were on the team that helped design and implement the Actimmune study under Dr. Harkonnen's instruction?
Yes, that's true.
Throughout the duration of Intermune's IPF study, Did Dr. Harkonnen ever express that he was more interested in money than statistical accuracy and ethical interpretation of data?
He expressed that he wanted to increase profits of Actimmune. He also said he wanted to publish results that were favorable for the company.
Do you advise Dr. Harkonnen against making post hoc subgroup analysis?
Yes, but he told me and my team to go through the data until he found something that benefited Intermune and got the FDA to approve Actimmune for the treatment of IPF.
No further question at this time.
You work for the defendant, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in your experience working under Dr. Harkonnen at Intermune, has he ever had ill intent towards any of the company's consumers?
Absolutely not.
Has Dr. Harkonnen knowingly and purposely deceived the public in order to increase the profits?
He may find inventive ways to increase profits, but his intentions have never been directly to lie to the public.
Thank you.
We've heard witness testimony. If neither side is calling any more witnesses, including the defendant himself, then I will now hear closing arguments. Are you ready for final arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
The defense will argue that this case is a violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution. It is not. Free speech ends where fraud begins. Why fraud is defined as an intentional scheme to defraud another out of their money using electronic communications. In his press release, Dr. Harkonnen knowingly attempted to con people suffering with IPF out of their money by falsely asserting that those with mild to moderate cases of the disease will experience a 70% reduction in mortality if they took Actimmune. Dr. Harkonnen's company would have received $400 to $500 million in profits if the press release has yielded FDA approval for Actimmune. By publishing his press release about Actimmune, Dr. Harkonnen committed wide fraud. The press release was untrue and it implied a causative relationship between Actimmune and the mortality rate, which is an incorrect interpretation of p-values. Dr. Harkonnen falsely labeled Actimmune as a drug for IPF and encouraged physicians to prescribe it for IPF patients, despite the fact that it was not FDA approved to treat IPF. Harkonnen's press release was criminal. This is a classic case of a greedy CEO misrepresenting their products for monetary gain at the expense of the consumers of their products. Dr. Harkonnen distributed misleading information to take advantage of the most vulnerable people in our society, the ill. He's guilty of wide fraud, and he should pay the price for attempting to financially exploit a fatal disease.
The prosecution just argued that Dr. Harkonnen's press release is not protected under the First Amendment because it is fraud. But Dr. Harkonnen was not attempting to defraud anyone, especially not IPF patients. The reason he conducted a trial for Actimmune was because he genuinely believed that Intermune's drug would benefit those with IPF. He was not attempting to exploit or defraud IPF patients. He was trying to extend their lives. And as far as the press release, Dr. Harkonnen shared his opinion concerning the results of the study. He believed that patients with mild to moderate IPF would experience a 70% reduction in mortality. An opinion cannot be true or untrue. It is an opinion, and opinions are protected by the First Amendment. Now you may say that his interpretations of statistical data were inaccurate. That may be true, but if that were so criminal, wouldn't statisticians be supporting the prosecution? Dr. Harkonnen's supporters include statisticians, legal scholars, and pulmonologists. He is supported by those who interpret p-values as their career, and those whose job it is to interpret the law, as well as the medical experts who are extremely familiar with IPF. If Dr. Harkonnen had committed such a heinous act, then his supporters would agree to a conviction. Simply put, they do not want him to be convicted for expressing his medical and statistical opinion. This case is nothing more than the government trying to make an example out of a hardworking man trying to help his company and customers.
Will the jury four-person please stand? Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
What say you?
We, the jury, in the case of W. Scott Harkonnen versus the United States, find the defendant guilty of the charge of wire fraud. As for the charge of false labeling, we find the defendant not guilty. Our verdict is based on the fact that Dr. W. Scott Harkonnen knowingly issued false or fraudulent statements in the August 28, 2002 press release with an intent to defraud.
Thank you, jury, for your service. Court is adjourned. lost everything. I won't be able to practice medicine, and I won't work for any medical or pharmaceutical company. I can't believe they sentenced me to 6 months home confinement, 200 community service hours, and a $20,000 fine because of a lousy press release. My life is ruined.
After Dr. W. Scott Harkonnen was convicted, the Department of Health and Human Services prohibited Harkonnen from working for any organization receiving Medicare or Medicaid money. Despite this, Harkonnen continued to appeal his conviction through the distinct and appellate courts.
This case, which had developed into a nearly 2-decade-long ordeal, ended on November 5, 2018, when the United States Supreme Court rejected Harkonnen's petition to appeal his case further. At this point, he has no other way to overturn his conviction and will likely lose his medical license and be banned from employment by any company seeking FDA approval.
As for Intermune, the company was ordered to pay $37 million in 2006 in settlement for claims that it marketed Actimune for IPF despite the fact that it was not approved for this use by the FDA. The Harkonnen case exhibited the way in which any study can be corrupted by misinterpreted statistics, as well as the ways that statistics can be misused for monetary gain at the expense of the integrity of research practices and those reliant upon their findings.
This case has important implications in statistics, the medical and pharmaceutical industries, law, and public health. Companies must adhere to strict laws when publicizing information that can affect the well-being of the public. This protects the general population from becoming victim to the consequences associated with immoral business practices and distorted statistical interpretations. The Harkonnen case has reinforced the importance of ethical standards in this field, along with exemplifying the power that biostatisticians hold.